Welcome everybody to the paper 3 guidance video with me, and let's move on. So it's very highly requested, and a little pep talk to get you guys going is that this is the time to lock in. If you had bad paper 1s or 2s, whatever, this is a chance to save that grade, and it's really make or break at this point. But that being said, it's honestly a very nice paper. So before we get going, a lot of people stress too much on this exam since they do very little exam practice on it. But this was by far the most chill exam I've done, and there's only really one new thing in analyze questions, and even the large 18 and 24 markers are evaluate questions, which you've definitely done before, and you also have 2 hours 15 minutes for 70 marks, which is a lot of time. But that being said, there are timings you should still follow. So predictions, they can only ask it on the 4 core topics on globalization, superpowers, hazards, water, and carbon. Everyone has done, and they usually combine one human and one physical topic together. And for the booklet, so using that knowledge, you can make your own prediction. I'm not going to do it for you guys. And we're going to get started then. So what to do as soon as the exam starts? First thing to do, actually, is to open up the question paper. Why I say this is so you can quickly identify the themes of the paper. You could also do this with the resource booklet, but the quicker you identify what's needed is what topics there are, is the quicker you can utilize your own knowledge, which is very important. And then I want you to put your focus on the big mark questions. So whilst you're flicking through the question paper, flick through to the 18 and 24 markers very quickly. And then I want you to make a mental and physical note of what they're asking. So they could ask anything from I'll show you later an example, is a country sustainable, for example. And then I want you to keep this idea of sustainability in your mind. And then I also want you to annotate the question with little ideas like sustainable in a human sense, physical sense, blah, blah, blah. In case you forget those ideas, as a spur of the moment ideas are often a lot better than the ideas that take 20 minutes to come up with because you're stuck. And then afterwards, after annotating the big mark 1824 markers, I want you to open a resource booklet and annotate figures with the big question in mind so that you'll remember to use them in the when you come back to the question. So I will now show you a visual demonstration of my incredible exam technique to you guys. So I'm emulating or simulating what I'll do in an exam. So open up the book question paper, and I'll look through one theory of development. Okay, so we're thinking about global passenger power. So we know the paper will be about superpowers straight away. So let me just get my red pen out. So we know superpowers is going to be the topic straight away, and it's plus something. And boom, boom, we scroll down. Earthquakes. I literally see earthquakes. So we know it's going to be superpowers plus tectonics. That is going to be the theme of today's question. Today's paper. So now, what we're going to do now is go to the big mark questions. Study section being the resource booklet. The 18 marker here. Evaluate the view that international trade is the main factor of success of Japan's economy. So international trade. That is the key term. So what we know about Japan is famous for its tech, cars, etc. And then I might want even to slot in case studies like Honda, not case studies, but name drop Honda, Toyota, massive car companies. I believe Toyota is the largest car company. Let me just search that up real quick to just to verify it. Yeah, Toyota is one of the largest. But yeah, so we can instantly think about that. So this is what I mean by annotating the question. Main factor of success of Japan's economy. Perhaps we can talk about its culture. Again, I'm using my own knowledge and might seem a bit cringe, but anime is always a big one. It's a big part of its industry and culture. And what can we even talk about? International trade. We can talk about downsides, perhaps. We look for downsides. Perhaps we know that the agriculture isn't the greatest, and maybe we'll find something in the booklet about it. Agriculture. And yeah, this is stuff like you're going to throw around this idea, but make a mental note of international trade. Okay, now we move to the 24 marker. Evaluate a view that Japan's status as a significant global power is unsustainable. So, global power and unsustainability. So we can break this down, unsustainable into human and physical sustainability. And straight away, I'm thinking of perhaps physical. We want to talk about resources. That's the most obvious one. And perhaps, I don't know, but resources are going to be a big one. Human. What comes under human global power? I mean, power. So we can talk about demographics. And we know that Japan has an aging population. Sorry. So maybe we might find something in that booklet, but I'm not sure yet. And then human, we can also talk about, what can we talk about for human? Let me think. We can even talk about stuff like political power and stuff like that. So now we've had the idea of the two key things I want to make a note of are global power as unsustainable. So I want to mentally note unsustainable and the idea that international trade of Japan. So these are the two things that I want you guys to think about. And then when you've got these two key terms in your head, I want you to flick to the resource booklet. And yeah, so we started the resource booklet, and then I want to annotate things that could perhaps help me in my 18 or 24 marker. So just quickly scrolling for it. Country subject to earthquakes, blah, blah, eruptions from 110 active volcanoes, imminent threat. So perhaps we can talk about unsustainability. So linked to the 24 marker. It's unsustainable because unsustainable due to risk. Okay, that's already one here. And 8% of blah, blah, blah. 60% of the country is forested, and very little is available for arable farming and food production. So we can link this to the 18 marker about trade. So Japan crops aren't in the most simple form equal as bad. I mean, we can also link this to the 24 marker, perhaps linking to how unsustainable can't feed population. Like, listen, the notes or annotations you make here are supposed to be very quick and simple. And again, perhaps we can link this to, let's see, figure, how could I link this to the 24 marker? 24 marker. We can talk about flood risks, perhaps. Flood risks, and then name drop some areas in Japan. That could be one. That, again, link this to 24 marker. And we can perhaps talk about why it's unsustainable in the sense that high risk of destruction. And then I just want you to go, you guys to go through all of these again. I don't know what, I think I just drew random stuff here. But here, we can look at this, talk about earthquake risk, again, 24 marker. I believe all of this, 25% of all buildings have inadequate earthquake resistance, 360 billion. Oh, this is some good stuff I'm seeing. Again, unsustainable due to, so this linked to the 24 marker, high costs, high economic costs. So we can just do stuff like this, very simple annotations, and think about which can link to which. And I believe this is the Japan's population. Wow, okay, aging population. And what we can note here is, I wrote this here. I think this is from when I did it, when I did my A-levels. I think I actually wrote these annotations on it. But we move and we can talk about, link this to, again, the 24 marker of being unsustainable. And it really is amazing that you can just scroll through and find a lot of stuff to, I guess, improve your 18 and 24 markers. But essentially what I'm telling you guys, scroll through the resource booklet, find any evidence you can use for the 24 markers or the big markers, and it's a good way to do it. And yeah, that is essentially what you should be doing. And I don't have any complaints about this, but this is exactly what you should be doing. Scroll through, find evidence for your 24 marker and 18 marker, and note them down so that you don't go through a block in the exam. So yeah, this is what you should be doing, guys. Alright, so now I've demonstrated what you've done. what you should be doing at the start. Now let's move on to the little stuff. So you always get a full marker at the start that purely test content. Don't stress too much. Simple PE paragraph should get the job done. If you're stuck, write anything and focus on the rest of the paper. This will just ask you about like you don't need anything with the resource booklet on this question. It'll ask you like it'll be like a GCSE style question in my opinion, and it's just based on content from paper 1 or 2, from like superpowers, globalization, or the other ones. And there'll also be a stats test usually, and make sure you know how to quickly add on a calculator. It shouldn't be too bad. A lot of it is just adding up like columns and rows. I won't teach you how to do it. And the one thing I would say is there's always this like thing where people don't understand hypothesis testing. Like, when you accept something, when you reject something. So just put simply, if you calculate a value, or if you calculate a value, and if your calculated value is bigger than the critical value, then you accept the alternative hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis. And on the flip side, if the value is smaller, you calculated is smaller than the critical value, you reject the alternative hypothesis and accept the null hypothesis. So let me give you a thing. Sorry, before I messed up the thing, but okay. So if you calculate a value of 7.5, you can say stuff like your result is at the 90% significance level because it's bigger than 6.25. And since 7.5 is bigger than 6.25, you accept the alternative hypothesis and reject the null hypothesis. However, at 95% significance, 7.5 is less than 7.81, which is the critical value for 95% significance. So you reject the alternative hypothesis and accept the null hypothesis. So as long as your calculated value is bigger than the critical value at certain levels of significance, you can accept or reject the null. So if it's bigger than the critical value, you always accept the alternative hypothesis. But make sure in the exam, if it gives you something like this, and for example, you calculate 7.5, you can only say the critical value is bigger. Sorry, 7.5 is only bigger than 6.25, so it's only 90% significant. So you can only reject the alternative or accept the alternative hypothesis at certain significance levels. So just watch out for that. And to wrap it up, if your value is bigger than a critical value, you accept the alternative hypothesis. That's what I'm trying to say. I probably confused you guys, but it's just about which one's bigger. So I'll put you back here and here, when to accept or reject the hypothesis, and make sure you know what to say. So this is like language you should be using if it gives you a full marker. And a classic question on a stats test I always used to run into when I was doing these papers is explain why the data is unreliable. And there's often times that you can't think of it. But there are some like key like stuff you can say that really helped me. So what I like to do is look at an interval of time between sample points, and if they are too large, or like if they're like gaps of 2 years in between sample points, or 3 meters between sample points, I always like to say, oh, you can make it smaller, the interval size is smaller, stuff like that. Also look at the sample sizes. So if it gives you like a list of superpowers and there's only 20 of them, you can say, oh, there's only 20 superpowers. It's not accurate data. And then, are your samples concentrated in one area and not representative? So, for example, if you're given a list of countries all in South America and you want to find theories or want to find patterns of development, perhaps it's not the best because you're only concentrating in South America. And my favorite of all things to say is that correlation does not mean causation. So, if your data or the table is alluding to like some special conclusion, make sure you say correlation does not mean causation. Therefore, more data is needed for a causal relationship to be established. All right, the final point for this one is also look at the data. So, is the data point vague? Is what they're trying to measure very vague? For example, you could have like development. If they're trying to quantify something very subjective like development, say it. All right, now we move on to I already mentioned this. We move on to the big boys now. The 8 marker analyze. In my opinion, okay, sorry. Let me just read out what the analyze what an examiner said about analyze. Analyze is a command word used uniquely on the A-level papers. The command is asking students to use a resource or resources to break down an issue into individual components and then establish connections on the connections between those components. This is arguably top 5 worst explanations of all time, but don't worry, I will show you how to do it. When I was reading this, I was getting angry. This is what I would say to you if I was trying to sell a scam. If I was trying to sell you my finance course, for example, a scam finance course to you, this is what I'll say my course does. Reading this just angers me sometimes because I don't know why. They just use all this dumb language. It's not even dumb language. They just, like, what does this even mean? Break down an issue into individual components, then establish connections. That's just stupid. But run over. The big thing you should take away from this is you need to make connections between components. That's the only thing you can take away from this, in my opinion, and that means explain relationships between similarities, differences between data points. And yeah, I'll show you how to do 8 markers in a bit. So for the 8 mark analyze question, what helped me was to copy people. And when I mean copy people, I don't mean in an exam. I mean before the exam, you copy people. And I literally read every good available 8 mark response and just copied the language and techniques they adopted. So I'll show you some examples from examiner reports, and I'll create just like some tips and tricks. As in, again, for 8 marker analyze, I feel like some teachers don't know what they're doing with it. And the mark scheme does not help at all because it just gives you like individual briefs of what you could say, but doesn't actually explicitly tell you how to write it. So the first question, or example question, will be on this question, and it says analyze the relationship between income per capita and natural resource exports after studying Figure 9. And this is Figure 9. And this is more of like a graphical style 8 marker. But let's move on to what this person did very well. So I'll give you I guess pause the video, read it, and yeah, before you replay the video. So if you paused it and read it and come back now, the things to note that were good about this answer is that it's, if given a graph, make sure you talk about a relationship between 2 factors as a starting point. So notice how she said, or they said, sorry, there is a negative correlation. And we look at here, yes, we can establish that, right? There is a negative correlation. If you notice, both start at 0 on the right, which looks a bit weird and odd. But yeah, it's a negative correlation. They've established that, which is good. They've made a link between components. And then an easy point they make is about anomalies. So the relationship isn't strong as there are many outliers. Angola is one. Guys, if there's a outlier like Angola right here, make sure you talk about it. They want you to analyze the relationship, and part of analyzing is just like finding outliers and explaining it. This is sort of like what we did in the NEA, and talk about how straight away you disprove your original relationship. So if you've watched my NEA videos on data analysis and how I analyzed, it's literally looking at this and I guess finding the relationship between factors and suggesting reasons for why a outlier has occurred. And then what I liked about this one is how it's when they back up their points, they're using very simple data or evidence. So just make sure to give some exact figures. It can literally be like it can look overwhelming from like this, but I want you to just pick out 2 points, and they've done exactly that. So they've done Cambodia to Nigeria. And then what I also like about this is when you analyze something, you can also question the figure. Think about how accurate something is. So what they told her is that, in fact, if Costa Rica, Malaysia, and Argentina were not selected in the list, there would be no relationship at all. So they're questioning it. And we are not told what they actually export. So notice how it's just GDP per capita US dollars, fossil fuel, mineral, and oil exports as a percentage of total annual GDP. Notice how they don't tell you exactly. It's just like an accumulation of 3 different things that they include in the x-axis, and this candidate talked about it. So make sure you critique it as well, and just think of say like stuff like, sure, So this person is pushing the idea that sure there is a relationship, but then they'll be like, actually, it's not too strong because there are some flaws in the data points, or not flaws, but there's some outliers. And yeah, and what I really liked about this one was that they questioned the relationship if countries were removed. So if China, if in fact, if Costa Rica, Malaysia, and Argentina were not selected in a list of countries, there would be no relationship. And yeah, this is like, again, analyze is a bit of a weird one, but it's just about finding the connection between two factors, explaining it, and giving a bit of evidence as well. So if you really wanted to, this person could have, what's it called? Negative correlation between two factors, and then they could have given evidence. I think this would have made it better slightly, although this got 8 out of 8. And yeah, critique it, say what's bad about it, not what's bad, but suggest, like, for outliers, suggest, talk about them, and then also say why the data perhaps isn't accurate and it's not the best, and how you can't make a what's that, leap of faith judgment, and you can't properly analyze it. And yeah, and another thing they do is they put in their own knowledge, which is completely fine. But yeah, it's completely fine, and yeah, they explain a bit about the relationship as well. So that's what's good about this one. All right, now we move on to the next 8 marker. So yeah, my strategy was very different. I actually didn't. My teachers didn't really teach me how to analyze properly as well. But I understand that I'm not guiding your hand through this. There's no exact structure, but my tip to you guys for 8 markers, a lot of people are asking about it. Just read. Find any 8 marker you can. So I found 3 for you guys today, including this one. But the real tip is, if someone's done it, if someone's doing using a method and it's tried and tested and it's gotten 8 marks, copy that method and use language like this. So that was my way of studying it. So admittedly, I'm just showing you good examples, but by just reading those examples, you will just pick up stuff. So, in fact, the few things you could pick up now are, I guess, a good thing you can always talk about is, I like how they said if Costa Rica, Malaysia, and Argentina were removed from the list, then there would be no relationship at all. I think that's a cool point to make, and if you do have like a graph like this in an exam, definitely say something like that. So again, it's just about mimicking what like top students do, and that's what I did in this case. And we have another one here. Study figure 3, analyze the differences in level of development for the 3 countries shown. So here we have here, and I'll show you the example that the examiner reports gave an 8 out of 8. So pause it, read it, and yeah, just pause it, read it. I'll give you a few seconds before I begin talking again. So yeah, the things to note, what's good about this one is, after reading it, is that it constantly questions the conclusion that it makes. So it talks about the income data being unreliable due to the Gini coefficients showing a different story. So it talks about Angola having a very high, relatively high, GDP per capita, and it might appear to be the most developed, but with the country's high Gini coefficients, the income data is unreliable, which is a good thing. So it's giving a point. It's showing, like, yeah, there's a difference with Angola. However, this is unreliable. So what these two answers do well is that it gives at a glance, the most simple basic analysis. So negative correlation, or Angola is the highest, but, and then they have this like, but it doesn't show the whole picture. And that is what you guys need to be doing. That's what something you guys need to be like picking up from this, is to show a casual relationship but then question it. It's not the best. That's what I really liked about this. And then the social data tells a different story because it has a very high level of inequality and exceptionally high rate of infant mortality. So yeah, again, it's looking at multiple viewpoints. It's looking at this. In this case, it's talking about social data, and by contrast, the DLC of an average income less than 1 has a better life expectancy. So again, it's about comparing things, and yeah, it's using data, which is, in my opinion, this answer could have explicitly used data a bit better. However, this did get 8 out of 8 to its credit, but I feel like the way it went about slotting it in for evidence from the figure was a bit weird, but so saying the income less than 1/10 of Angola's. They could have just literally stated the income, average income of each country, but yeah. So yeah, again, it's comparing. Also has the lowest percentage under 14, which suggests that it might be a higher stage of demographic transition. However, Congo seems to be the most advanced socially with the highest electricity supply and the best infant mortality. Although not good by global standards, it all depends how development is defined. And if it's simply economic, then Angola is way ahead. But this is not how HDI is measured. So again, what these two answers do well at the end here is you can't just purely rely on the figure. You gotta suggest stuff. So you gotta use your own knowledge. So in this case, in this answers, it talks about how China and India have developed a manufacturing industry, which is what helped it develop. And yeah, again, it's going a bit off topic, but it's showing the examiner you know how you know your stuff basically. And in this case, it talks about how you can't compare also analyze levels of development. Development is very broad. If we're talking, and I like how this one talks about how in the economic development sense, Angola is completely ahead. But if we're talking about social development and HDI stuff, then Angola won't be the best as well. So yeah, again, it questions the figure. It's saying how development is very broad, and it depends how development is defined. That's very good. And some geographers believe that political factors should be included, but these are hard to measure and not included here. So yeah, you got to start on your own knowledge here, and then again, question the figure a bit as well. I think that's what really helps you analyze. But yeah, here's another final one I found. You can always find these on examiner reports, but it's up to you what to do. So reader, I haven't annotated anything about this, but yeah, slightly different this one. But yeah, pause it, read it, and I'll move on. So, and yeah, after reading a couple 8 markers, generally most examples I saw just do a massive chunky paragraph with multiple points and a little mini conclusion. And to make it clearer, I think like what they've done is like 2 to 3 developed paragraphs with a little wrap up at the end. So notice for this one, it talks about how at the end it talks about how development is hard to measure and perhaps like you can't really make a conclusion about it. And then this one it talks about how um, I guess what's it called? Very rich, risky. Depends on natural resource exports. Okay, so this one talks about how you can't really make a relationship properly because you don't know what they're exporting. But yeah, that is generally roughly the structure. So they've made like 2 to 3 developed points, and they've given a bit of evidence for each. And here's some top tips I just generally found out through looking at a couple of them. Is to try and find a relationship between two factors and state it for easy marks, e.g., positive negative correlation. As one goes up, does the other one decrease, or as one goes up, they both increase. And try to talk about anomalies. They're very good, easy talking points, and then you can use this to question your relationships, which is what these two have done. This one, this one, and this answer have done. I'm pretty sure. So to talk about anomalies and stuff like that. What was I gonna say? Question the figure as well. If anything is unclear or does not paint the full picture, e.g., if the sample is only 10 countries or something, say stuff like, I cannot make a. Although it is like looking at figure 5, it is clear that Angola is the highest, or there is a correlation between the 5 countries of income and development and social development. This is only 5 countries. We need 10 more countries to be able to make a more informed conclusion. And the evidence is supposed to be kept simple. So don't try to find crazy relationships, make it simple. And insert some of your own knowledge, you flex a bit. So, if, for example, if you know a country has a certain type of industry, just name drop it, but don't go further. So, again, the 2 examples I've shown you, I've got markers, put in a bit of their own knowledge, and that is what you should be doing. So, yeah. And again, apologies, guys. I'm not exactly holding your hands on how to do 8 markers, but my tip for you: copy people with the highest marks, and you should do fine. And these are like the things I picked up of what they've done. All right, now we move on to the 18 marker evaluate question. If you don't know how to evaluate yet, I actually have a video. So I've gained quite a few subscribers since the past few weeks. But watch my video on how to evaluate 20 markers. It's literally the same thing. Don't worry, it's the same thing you do as always. This is the part that's not new in the paper. And it's the structure's the same basically with intro. And I would suggest 3 plus. So 3, if you can do 3, it should be fine. But try to do like aim for 4 maybe, because you have a lot of time, so you can write a lot more. 3 plus main body paragraphs. I personally had very small handwriting, so I just did 3 absolutely chunky paragraphs. But you do generally have more time, so try more if you can. But again, more is not always better. Quality over quantity, and have a conclusion. So if you don't know how to evaluate, I have a 20 marker masterclass, I guess, on my channel that I've uploaded. And you obviously need a conclusion. Conclusion is always a must, and an intro is also a must for such a big mark question. So don't skip it. 24 marker, again, it's the same as a 20 marker, but again, slightly longer. And again, intro, a must, 4 plus main body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Again, 4 is like, I wouldn't say it's a minimum, but I used generally around roughly did 4 most of the time, and I was lucky if I could do 5. I know a lot of people suggest 5, and a conclusion, which is a must. Now, when talking about using your own knowledge. So a lot of people, I remember someone asked me, I forgot who it was. Someone asked me about how do I slot in my own knowledge in a 18 to 24 marker? Well, what I like to do with 18 to 24 markers is to plan my paragraphs and try to do some of my paragraphs with only my own knowledge, and other paragraphs with strictly only booklet knowledge. And I will show you what I mean when I plan my 24 marker together. And I will be basing this off the 2019 paper. And also, another key thing to note is the process of planning this 24 marker will be the same as planning the 18 marker. So I will now get to show you what to do. Alright guys, so here we are, back on the pad, back on the uh, very beautiful 24 marker. I will now teach you how to plan it very quickly. And I'll just give you an example of like things how you like integrate your own knowledge and the resource booklet knowledge. So, evaluate the view that Japan's status as a global power is unsustainable. So the whole paper, or what I showed you before, was this whole thing was based on tectonics plus superpowers. And the first thing I'm thinking of already is, because this is tectonic superpower, the easiest point to make, so for paragraph 1 would be unsustainable due to the high costs in mitigating strategies, cost of mitigation strats. And what I mean by this is that if you've done tectonics, you don't realize how much it costs to actually protect yourself against hazards like earthquakes. And now let's go to the resource booklet. I think it's here. Yep. And what we can say for this is, you look at some of this. Let's see. Is anything stand out to me? Or the thing is, instead of just like stressing about what you need to find, because I've planned, or like I've already like annotated little things that I could use for my 20 marker, I've literally can do this. So 1 second. I can literally just 24 marker, I can copy this. There are 47 volcanoes that pose an imminent threat. And also, where is it? I remember seeing something. Sorry, I didn't see something here, but we can move on. So 20 threat. We can also use this. Sorry. 20% of all global map goes around Japan. So we can still use that stuff. So we can, I will just slot in here. 1 second. Figure 2 and 3. Where is it? Figure 2 and 3. And I remember there was a figure about 330 billion cost of the 2011 earthquake, of 2011 tsunami. So that is already 1. So unsustainable long-term economically. So this is my first paragraph I made. And this is how I've used a lot of the resource booklet. And then to continue this, I would actually do another paragraph, perhaps not in the same order, but it's also politically unsustainable. So I'm going to use purely my own knowledge for this part of the paper, of this paragraph, sorry. And I'm going to talk about how the rise of the Chinese threat. So what I mean by this is we look to today. There's a massive China-Taiwan conflict, and if it escalates, it could lead to political instability in the region and thus affect Japan and affect its significance as a global power. So whilst there's paragraph 1 will be about long-term economically unsustainable to become for a superpower, and the paragraph 2 will be about the political instability in the region, which leads to political loss of political power in the region. And we can also talk about the dispute over Senkakus, which equals threat of China. That is one. And what I forgot to tell you guys is also plan the introduction. So introduction can just be define superpower. And that is what I would say is my introduction. And this is purely from my own knowledge. So politically unstable long term. That is an example. And then you can link that to how its global power or its global reach or global influence of Japan is decreased in the region of China. So, and not region of China, in Asia, decreased influence in the region. That is something you could talk about. And then paragraph 3 is you could talk about Japan in the sense that it is also economically very strong. So long term equals sustainable power. And then now we look to thing. But when you can also incorporate your own knowledge plus resource booklet knowledge. So for example, I for sure, since I'm going to be doing biomedical engineering at uni, this biomedical engineering industry is popping off right now. It is like you search up biomedical industry engineering, best places to do it in, it's Japan, Australia, and something else. So I'm using my own knowledge. It's got strong biomedical engineering industry, and what we can extrapolate from this is that it's got a strong tech-based sector. Strong tech sector. So now we move on to the resource booklet, and we can try to find stuff that are that is going to help us with this. Oh wait, I've literally found something here. Although I didn't annotate this specifically, but where is it gone? It's not this one. This one. Japan ranks 4th globally for the value of its exports. We can slot that in as like a little line we can use as for the 24 marker. So just note this down. And we can talk about how the motor cars and electronic circuits, I want to focus on these two because it really pushes my agenda of Japan being a very high-tech company. So circuits and motor cars. So we go back here to our paper. We can talk about the 92 billion exports. Sorry, where is it? $92 billion in motor car exports. So that is an example of what we can do as our third paragraph, and we can say it's very economically strong. So yes, it's sustainable as a superpower or global power. Paragraph 4, I want to talk about resources. Now, I know nothing about Japanese resources and or anything. What can we say about this? Resources. We can look to the booklet, and actually, before we go that, by planning this earlier, I've remembered a point that I've used. So paragraph 5, I'm just going to skip to paragraph 5. We can talk about the aging population. And then we can use data from the resource booklet because I remember seeing it. So aging population equals unsustainable. Like, this is what I was telling you guys earlier. note down your ideas straight away because you're gonna forget in the spell of sometimes in the heat of a moment you forget what you were about to say. So note it down ASAP. And aging population, and I can use resource booklet evidence. So this is an example of what you can do. And then resources, going back to resources, we can look at the resource booklet again. Let's see. So Japan nuclear, we can look at it. We can see that, let's look at the rise of the thing. Let's see. It uses a lot of natural gas, don't get me wrong. But let's focus up on the renewable energies that Japan uses. So what's the water one? Coal is going up as well. So blah blah blah. By the looks of it, it looks like Japan's trend of coal usage is going up. Coal/gas increasing. So perhaps you can just mention that and then go back here. So you can use the resource booklet and talk about coal/gas increasing, usage increasing, but it's got low natural supplies. Because if you know anything about Japan, they actually use a lot of oil and they import it a lot of the times. But we can therefore say that due to the resources, unsustainable resources, it's hard to sustain population, sustain power. Sorry. And then finally, aging population. We look back. There was a whole population thing in the resource booklet. Where was it gone? So 125 million in 2010 to 90 million in 2060. Okay. 2010, where is it? 2010, oh crap. 2010, 125 million to 2060, 90 million. What this means is a lot of people are going to die in between because of an aging population. That's just how it's going to be. Therefore, no workforce. That's what you can say. And then for my conclusion, since I've argued that it's unsustainable like 3 times, I'm just going to be like it's unsustainable. So this is like the type of planning that kind of needs to go in it, but I'm showing you how easy it is. Once you've planned it initially at the start, I've already had my ideas thought out in an order, and all I had to do was look at the resource booklet and just pull out specific things. So it's a very nice paper in my opinion, but this is what you should be doing when you plan this 24 marker. And again, I can't stress, you basically do the same for the 18 marker. And obviously in an exam, in the heat of the moment, you're not going to make a as detailed of a plan like this. But in an exam, I could expect you guys to make, like, for example, paragraph 1, age population, age pop, and then unsustainable, long term. That is like literally the plan. It could literally be like this. I just made it slightly more detailed. And the final thing I would tell you guys to do is, I banged on about it, is I'm going to put in caps, temporal and spatial. This is how you should like evaluate things or assess things. So it's the idea of short / long term. My handwriting is getting disgusting because I haven't written anything in so long. And idea of local, national, etc. International scale. So think about like what factors act on what like scales, and a short-term factor will obviously be less influential as a long-term factor in some cases, and that is how you should be assessing. Again, if you don't know how to assess or you're struggling on 20 markers, watch my video on it, and this is exactly what you should be thinking about in the exam for paper 3. Alright, moving on. Let's go to the final part, which is nothing. So, good luck for the exam. Good luck if you're studying this. If you're watching this in 2024, as the first, I guess, set of students I've actually given advice to, good luck for the exam on Monday. What can I say? You're gonna smash it. Just stick to yourself, stick to guidance, do what you've done best over the last 2 things. Look at a lot of examples, and you should be good. Look at a lot of examples, copy them, rewatch my 20 marker videos if you want. And yeah, just, take it easy before leading up to the exam. But yeah, this is the final video you guys are probably going to watch from me. Unless you retake, which you won't, because you guys are smart people. But how do I say this? This is like a Vin Diesel and a Paul Walker moment in Fast and Furious 5, I guess. I'm moving on my own path. You guys are digressing to another. And yeah, if you ever recognize my voice on the street somewhere, give me a shout. Say hello, I guess. I'll be down to say hello as well, I guess. But yeah, I don't know how you guys would recognize me in the first place because I haven't done a face reveal. I'll probably do a face reveal at 1 million subscribers. But it's been a long journey since the NEA days. But I really wish you the best of luck in whatever you're gonna do next. And I'm sure you're gonna smash those grades, get A star, A star, A star, A star, A, and go on to higher education, degree apprenticeships, go on to do forex trading, go on to do amazing things in life, create the best engine in the world. I don't know, and yeah, you're gonna have a big house, 25 acre plots of land. Sorry, 1,000 acre plots of land. I don't even know, but yeah, I'm waffling. But what I'm gonna say is, I wish you the best of luck, and I will see you in the next one. If you ever click on my videos by accident.
All my fellas, all my fellas, all my fellas.